So how did you figure out what your priority was going to be, whether it's going to be like comedian or martial artist or business person? Because I feel like even for myself, I find it difficult to figure out where my priority should be because I run martial arts schools, right? But I also do coaching. I also like really love the podcast, right? So how did you figure out what your focus was going to be?
That's a really good question. I think it was a lot of trial and error. I think it was sort of picking things and thinking, well, maybe this is my specialty. Maybe I'm, I remember when I went to film school at College of Santa Fe in Santa Fe, New Mexico, and was like, I'm going to be a filmmaker. And then I graduated, and right after graduating, pretty much, I booked like 3 acting roles, and they were small, but I got into the union like right away. And I thought, oh, okay, I'm an actor. And then I didn't book any work for a year. And I was like, oh, okay, so sometimes I'm an actor. I'm not actually an actor all the time because I can't figure out how to book work often enough. And then I got really, really in-depth training in American Kempo, which became Kempo 5.0, under Tony and Erica Potter, who were in the Jeff Speakman system. And I became obsessed with that. I was like, okay, maybe, I even thought, I don't know, maybe I'll teach or something. Maybe I'll get a school. I don't know. I'm really enjoying this. And I was going to class twice a day, 5-6 days. Every class. I was going every single time. And then my business was crashing and burning. It was dying on the vine because I was spending all my time training. And I was like,
Your
oh, okay,
acting
well,
business? Is that what you mean?
My video production business, which throughout the whole time I've been doing what I've been doing, it's involved some kind of video production, because that's the thing that I spent the most time trying to figure out: how to make my own content, how to do lighting, how to get good sound, how to make a composition that looked good, how to figure all that out. And so I was making promotional videos, industrials, corporate videos, promoting universities and things like that. But I couldn't grow the business because my focus was too divided. So then I refocused on that for a while, and then got kind of bored. It was good money, they were good people, but I don't know, I got tired of doing it. And the thing that I always came back to was trying to figure out how to tell stories. That was the thing that I was the most interested in. And I ended up teaching for a while. I taught at the Santa Fe Community College, and they needed somebody to teach the students how to work on a movie, because we were having a booming film industry in New Mexico. It was growing very, very quickly, but part of the stipulation for getting the rebate, the big tax rebate, was you had to hire 60% local. And very quickly, movies were running out of crew to hire locally. So they created these training programs, and I helped run one of the training programs, and they basically were like, come up with a short film, spend 6 weeks prepping it, shoot it over 3 days, and then that way these students will know what it's like to be on a set, and then we can send them out and get them hired. And so I did that for 2 or 3 years. So it was really just kind of bouncing around with whatever was offered to me, whatever was in front of me, as long as it ended up being creative, and as long as it ended up focusing on storytelling. That's what everything always came back to, because 3 years later, the funding had kind of dried up, and next thing I knew, I was kind of a teacher. I wasn't really making those films anymore through the program. I was teaching workshops. I was teaching a basic video production 101 class, and I was like, oh wait, I didn't mean to become a teacher. This was an opportunity for me to make movies when I started it. So every single time I go down any particular path, what I always come back to instinctively is, how am I going to be creative every day? How am I going to tell stories?
So when you were going to the martial arts school every day and your business was, dwindling, did you then feel like you weren't telling stories anymore? Or is that when you're like, oh, I need to tell stories about martial arts?
I was still telling stories. I was making short films through that community college program, and making a bunch of friends and building a great network of people who would ultimately work on Enter the Dojo, which became the birth of Master Ken. But I didn't have a focus. I was or at least I had a different focus. I was trying the model that was even old at that time, where I had read that sometimes if you make a short, oh, sorry about that. If you make a short film and then you get it into a film festival, you could get hired to do something. You know, you could get hired to write a movie, or you could get hired to direct something. And so I was making these little short films, and around that time, YouTube started up. And so my friends started making episodic content on YouTube, and I thought, that's kind of cool, because when I was making short films, it would take a year. You know, I would think up a script, and then I would write it, and then rewrite it, and then I would pre-produce it, and then we'd shoot it really quick, but then I'd take forever to edit it, and then it would go on the festival circuit for a year. And, you know, at the end of a year and a half, I was thinking, gosh, I think maybe 1,500 people saw that film over the course of a year and a half. Whereas with YouTube, it was available to everybody. And so I thought, okay, well, maybe I can make a show and combine my interests in martial arts, say, and my interest in video production. And so that was when I started thinking about how to make a show where me and my friends could get together regularly and create something, and making sure that it was something that I knew about.
I mean, you're a Kempo guy like I am. So if you're going to school and you're going multiple days a week, right? Usually you're going to be the star where the instructor is like, oh, you need to come teach, right? You should do more of this. Like, you love it.
No,
so how did you end up not
doing
that? Or did you do that for some period of time?
It's a natural reaction if anybody works their way up through the ranks to black belt, that, you know, that you have the opportunity to carry on a kind of legacy and to teach people and to open your own school and expand on all this. And there was a period of time where I think I was thinking like that. I was thinking, I'm not too bad at this, and I feel like I'm good with people, and I do enjoy martial arts and everything. But I just thought, gosh, I don't know if I love it the way that people who teach it love it. I think that was part of the decision too, was that I really enjoyed it, but I don't think that I loved it as much as the people I saw teaching it. So I thought, well, I don't want to half-heartedly do this. You know, I know that I love acting. I know I love writing. I love filmmaking. So I still want martial arts to be in my life, but I've got to find a way to combine the interests.
So let's go back to that focus question. So how did you figure out, or at what point were you like, okay, you know, I'm just going to go all in on this, like YouTube, right?
You know,
I'm going to go all in on making my own content.
It was a sort of staggered process. You know, it was like initially when I was making short films, I was making short horror films because I'd heard a lot of directors got started by making scary movies. So I thought, okay, well, I'll make scary movies. And then I couldn't help myself. In these scary movies, I would always throw in a couple of jokes, and the jokes would get the biggest reaction from the audience. And so then one time I thought, well, what if I just wrote a comedy? And I wrote it, and it won a bunch of awards, and it screened all over the world. And I was like, oh, okay, so maybe comedy is more my thing. And so from there, I started making comedies, but then that was still a little too broad. And when I was trying to figure out how to make stuff on YouTube, I would upload a short film that took me, like I said, 6, 8, 10 months to make while I'm working a regular job and, you know, just trying to pay for everything myself. And the short film would get 200 views over. And we get fewer views than when I was on the festival circuit. And I was like, well, this isn't what I meant to do. Like, I meant for more people. I had rationalized that at least on YouTube, more people are going to see it. And then I did a commercial for my Kempo school. And it was it was, you know, there's no comedy in it or anything. It was just meant to show Kempo. And that got like 20,000 views. And I was like, oh, okay. So the online audience is divided up into groups of people who are interested in specific things. So I had captured the interest of people who study Kempo. And obviously the production quality was either good enough or bad enough that it caught a lot of people's attention. And so that was one of the first times I thought, okay, so martial arts related content on YouTube, I'd rather do something funny. And that was where it really started to percolate. Like, I wonder if I could do a show. I wonder if I could do an episodic where people tune in, you know, every other week or something to watch a little sitcom. And that was where it started to grow.
So did you think of yourself, or I guess now, do you think of yourself more in terms of your identity as a comedian, as a business person, an actor,
I
a
usually
martial
say
artist? Like
entertainer.
when you see
I
yourself,
think
how do you
that
think
it's a broad topic, and I do think that
entertainer?
there have been times in my career where I've thought, no, I'm going to focus in on this one thing. I'm going to focus in on film and television acting, and I'm going to turn down all my live gigs, and then the gigs will dry up, and then I'll get offered to go to Switzerland or something to play Master Ken, and think, well, okay, that doesn't really make sense as a plan. Or I'll I've tried multiple times to zero in, and that hasn't worked for me. What has worked for me is going with the flow of whatever is presented to me. There are times when my videos are blowing up on multiple platforms, and I just say, okay, that's where my energy is going to go. And then from giving that energy, I get a bunch of requests for live appearances. And so then I go on around the world performing live. And then other times that completely dies down, and out of nowhere I'll start getting auditions. And I'll start going, okay, maybe this is an audition period. Maybe I'll start auditioning for these films now that they're being offered. So it's really been, the career that I've built has really been a moving target this entire time. And I'll fully disclaim, I don't know if I'm doing it right. I'm just telling you what I've been doing.
Yeah. So what does your family say about that? Like if you could have, let's say, a secure career, maybe teaching martial arts if you're good at it, or filmmaking, at least that's like a career path that's paved. But like at the time, at least, being a YouTube creator to make money or working as an entertainer or comedian, probably not as a secure financial future.
They were so worried about me.
Was your family support? Like how did you get through that?
Coach me out of doing these things, where they were like, I think he's going to do this regardless, because we've been telling him for 10 years, 15 years to like just go get a real job. And I understand now. That used to hurt my feelings when I was younger, but I understand now why they did that. Though they were so worried that I wouldn't be able to secure a financial future, that I wouldn't be able to be able to make choices later in life. That security was something that I understood the attractiveness of it. But I also think that at times it's an illusion. I think people can absolutely, and I don't ever wish anything like this to happen, but people can dedicate their lives to a 9-to-5 job, and go in one morning and get fired, and then go home and their house is burned down, and they didn't do anything wrong. It wasn't their fault. It just, life is unpredictable. And so I thought, well, life is already really unpredictable. I at least, to the detriment of a much more leisurely life, I'm just going to go all in at this thing, because I know this is what I really want to do.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. People have an idea that entrepreneurship is like super risky, or doing your own thing is risky, right? But I mean, having a 9-to-5 is risky too, because someone else, your job security is totally in someone else's hands, right? Like, how many people do you know that worked for a company for 20 years and just get laid off, or 10 years and just get laid off, and then you find out that they were
and all of a sudden you don't have a 401k like you thought you did, and now all of a sudden your investments are gone and everything. So I don't, and I know plenty of people who have picked a real straight and narrow path, and it has paid off for them. I just know that even in the best scenario where I did do that, and that even crossed my mind. In college, my first year, I really enjoyed my psychology classes, and I thought, well, maybe I'll just major in psychology, and I'll try to go get like a real job, and then I'll just make films on the side. I'll have like a regular job, but I'll make films on the side. And I'm glad I didn't do that, because you learn, like, the deeper into the business you get, it's really hard to do anything else. You're either in the business or you're not in the business, because things come up last minute. You have to be able to. I get phone calls where someone is saying, hey, what are you doing this weekend? And I say, nothing really, I don't think. And they'll say, okay, I need you at a convention. Give me your rates, but I'm sending you your plane ticket right now. And it's like, oh, okay, great. I guess I'm working this weekend. So, and I find that really exciting. So that's the trade-off that I've knowingly made all these years.
Yeah. So what gives you the most energy, you think? Is it creative, sitting behind a computer and editing and production, or is it doing live gigs?
I'm gonna divide it into energy versus fulfillment. I love taking my sweet time with a project that I'm writing and directing and, you know, working through the process of whether I'm in it or not as an actor. But that's a slow process, and I can be really precious about it. As far as energy, whether I like it or not, oftentimes being being thrown onto a stage for a gig that I found out about 3 days ago, and I'm performing for 500 people, is pretty energizing. It's terrifying, but it's energizing too, because every time I think, oh, this is going to be it. This is going to be when they find out that I'm not funny, and that I'm talentless, and that I've been defrauding everybody, all my fans, this whole time, and then somehow something comes out of me where I say the thing and I get a laugh, and it gets posted online and gets 1 million views, and I go, okay, all right, see, we're okay. Yeah.
Yeah, I think everyone feels like an imposter sometimes, no matter what they do, right? I mean, I've been doing martial arts since I was 3 years old, and I still feel like teaching sometimes when I get on the mat and instruct, like, am I doing the right thing? Is this the right thing, right? So when it comes to your personal life and you're traveling so often, going back and forth, how do you manage relationships, stuff like that?
You know, it's really sort of, it's kind of, some of it is making friends on the road. You know, I have people that have hired me for shows who are just good friends who we have a client, you know, entertainer relationship, but we have such a good time because people love to show me around. And so I'm thinking of a couple guys in Philadelphia, Bill Beck and David Pantano. They have a Krav Maga Kempo school, and
Yeah.
we have such a great time when they bring me out for shows. It is so fun. And so part of it is just like finding a way to combine the work. And you know, the way that it's been the past 2 years is that my girlfriend travels with me because I'm on the road too much to maintain a relationship, honestly, without that. So we travel together. She films, you know, when I'm up on stage, she films me with my phone or her phone so that I have clips for social media. And she helps manage the travel and everything. And then otherwise, it's really just sort of building this really wonderful network of friends all around the world who, once I do a show for them and they have a good time, we keep in contact for years.
So with your girlfriend,
yeah.
I think she was the producer for the movie you filmed, right? So at some point when I had maybe it was a couple of years ago, I had a girlfriend, and she was thinking about getting involved in the martial arts industry. She wasn't involved previously, but just saw like the lifestyle and liked it. And obviously we have the blueprint and how to open up and be successful. And I refused. I was like, nope. Like, if you want to end the relationship in like 6 months to a year, great, let's do that. But I don't want to do that. So I know I'm going to go crazy. So how do you do that with your girlfriend? We're always traveling and working together.
If I'm being honest, and I think she would say this too, the movie was a bit of a test of our relationship because I'm definitely the most experienced between the two of us in the process and how the business works. But she's got a business degree, and she's got, you know, she's younger, so she's got new ideas that I don't think of. So my challenge was trying to impart to her how things have worked when I've been on set a bunch of times before, while also trying to keep an open mind when she suggests something that I would have never thought of that might be a good solution to things. And I remember multiple times throughout the pre-production and production and even post-production, she would just turn to me and be like, you movie people are crazy. You're crazy. She's like, I don't understand why any of you do any of this. This is insane. Like, you work all the time and you don't even know if anything's going to be any good. And yet, like, sometimes you just show up not knowing anything that's going to happen. How can you do that? How can you? And I'm like, I don't know, babe. Like, this is just kind of how it goes. And that was something that was that we had conversations about. She would read, you know, what's on the call sheet for the next day. And it would be, I don't know, it would be a fight scene outside around a car. And she'd be like, well, but how are you going to do that? I'm like, I don't know. And she's like, well, but like, don't you need like pads, and don't you need like fake glass, and don't you need all this stuff? And I'm like, I don't know, probably, but we'll figure it out. And she'd be like going nuts, being like, what do you mean you will figure it out? And what she meant, what she understood later on, that what I meant is, I'm going to film whatever version of what's on the page that I can under the circumstances that are presented to me. Which is not the same that I was saying I'm going to film what I wrote. It's like every day, because it was a low budget movie, every day I would look at what I wrote and thought, that's pretty cool. I can't do at least 30% of that. So what's the version I can shoot? You know what I mean? Like what's the, when we're in a situation where, there's a car that like gets driven off of a cliff and blows up. It's like, okay, yeah, we can't do any of that. So what if I get yeah, exactly. Drive off the curb. You know what I mean? And then what if I get
drive
dragged
off
out
the
of the
curb.
car and I get my ass kicked? Okay, close enough. All right, we'll do that. And then figuring out how to do that. So yeah, it was definitely a big challenge, but it was something that was a great learning experience. And I think because she was also able to be creatively involved, because she did all of the music that you hear with lyrics in the movie is her music, and then we also worked with a brilliant composer named Sean Hettinger from Neon Moon Studios, who did all of the composing for the score. And so she got a lot of satisfaction out of being able to put her music in the movie and have some creative involvement while also dealing with payroll and trying to figure out how to get us fed and doing all the things that are very necessary and absolutely no fun.
That's so funny. So I want you to tell a story because I heard it. Well, first of all, tell us what the name
movie
is.
is called Cop
because
versus
I know
Killer.
it, but for anyone who's listening. And it was shot in this town in New Mexico with a ridiculous
Truth or
name.
Consequences, New Mexico,
What was it?
which is a
Truth and
fantastic
Consequence
name,
or
isn't it?
something? Is that like,
I've been
did
meaning
like a
to.
Hollywood
I used to know
producer
the
like buy
story
this
and then
town
I've
and change the
forgotten
name
it,
of
but
it?
what
And that's
I
what
think
they.
it is that it had a different name, and then years ago there was a popular, like many years ago, I believe there was a popular radio show called Truth or Consequences, and so I think they changed the name of the town to try to get people. I don't know if it was about tourism or to like get people to recognize the town or something. If anybody watching knows that I'm completely wrong about that, message me or comment about it and I'll correct myself. I'm probably going to go look it up right after this. But that was a great place to shoot the movie too, because it was something where it was a small town. Everybody that we talked to in the town was really excited that we were shooting a movie. They wanted to help. They wanted to show up as background actors. They wanted to give us their businesses as locations. They were so welcoming, and so Truth or Consequences became our little backlot. Like we felt like we had our own movie town, and we could just walk around and point at something and be like, "What about that?" And they'd be like, "Oh, let me call Ethel," and like they call Ethel, and like, "Yeah, Ethel said you can shoot there." It's like, okay, then we just go do it, So it was the town definitely became a character in the film.
Well, I'm excited for the news when I see Albuquerque changes their name to
Fingers
Enter
crossed.
the Dojo.
Fingers crossed. We need that PR.
That'd be very exciting. So I want you to tell the story specifically of when you go into, I think it was like an artist space or something, and you thought you were going to film there, and you thought everything was set up, and then it turns out you weren't able to film.
Oh
there.
my goodness, yes.
And some lady was yelling at you.
Yeah,
and you had to
so
film
this
as quickly.
happened.
To me, that was such a good example of entrepreneurship.
On Cop vs. Killer, every single day there was something that threatened to shut down the whole movie or at least lose us half a day of production, and we could not afford that. We were shooting the entire movie in 10 days, not because we wanted to, but because that was all the money we had to pay the cast and crew. We couldn't afford to pay people any further beyond 10 days. So we show up to a place called the El Cortez Theater, which is a beautiful historic theater right in the center of Truth or Consequences. And we walk in, and there's a bunch of tables and paints and things like that. And we had a short scene to film there, and then we had another location that was walking distance, a couple blocks away. And so I was like, okay, so this is cool because we'll save a company move, which means, packing everything up and driving people across town. I said, if we shoot in the morning at the movie theater, we can shoot the rest of the day at this other building for the other scenes, and we'll save time. So I walk in and I see paints and tables and tools everywhere. And I say, oh, that's weird. Somebody must be renovating. Hey, guys, move all this stuff up against the walls so we can set up our craft service and our equipment and everything. So we do that. I go in. We're blocking the first shot. And I come back out to check on, I don't know, something. And I see a woman furious on her cell phone, like looking around, walking around our craft service area where all the paints were, and yelling at somebody on the phone. And I said, "Hi, how you doing? Can I help you with something?" And she said, "Oh no, this is my artist space, and I rent this. I'm an artist. So this is my gallery space, and someone just came and moved all of my stuff. So I'm just calling the landlord so that we can get it sorted out and get this out of here." And I was like, "Oh." And so apparently there had been a miscommunication that we did not have permission to be there, and that we were in somebody's way, that we were offending a paying tenant who was renting that space. So rather than try to debate with her, I like sprinted back into the movie theater and told like the DP and the first AC and the actors, was like, "Guys, we got to go right now. We are about to get kicked out. Let's shoot. And so we rushed through. I think we shot that whole movie theater scene in about 45 minutes because we just had no choice. I was like, "We're getting kicked out, guys. We got to go. We would film a take and be like, "Good enough. Okay, now we're over here. And you can hear in the soundtrack, we had to replace a lot of the sound because I'm kind of just yelling over everything, being like, "Okay, walk in. Nope, go back and walk in slower. Okay, now stand over the head. Raise the axe up. Okay, swing it. Okay, cut. All right, moving on." I'm yelling over everything because we had no time. And we had things like that happen throughout the entire production.
And it's so similar to entrepreneurship, whether you run a martial arts school, any business. There's always fires to put out, right? And it's funny you mentioned like your girlfriend being like, "How are you going to do that?" And you're like, "I don't know, I just figured it out." Right? But the more she does it with you,
now
the
she
more
knows what that
confident
means.
she'll
She's
be
like,
that
"Oh
you
no, he
guys
doesn't
will
have a
figure it
plan,
out, right?"
And, I just know that he'll figure out a way to shoot something that will work.
Yeah, and whenever we're opening up a new location, with us, it's like a new relationship, right? Someone who's been a student with ours for a long time, maybe they're transferring from another school, and we're opening up a new location with them, and they're often like so worried, "But how are you going to do this? But how are you going to do that?" They want to know every single step, and it's like, well, don't worry, we've done it before. We're going to show you how it's done. But like when problem comes up, we'll deal with it. You don't have to solve problems before they come up, right? Or you'll just know how to work in the moment, right? It's like you can train with the best kicks and punches and know different combinations,
right?
But
Absolutely,
until you're in the fight,
you don't know until you're in the thick of it.
You're not really going to be able to
train and prep as much as you want, and then anybody who's ever done any kind of competition knows that you can be really great at the dojo, and then you step out onto the mat and your legs are wobbling and your arms feel heavy and you can't catch your breath and you're like, "What is going on here? I've been training for this for months and I feel like I've never done anything in my life." And then you get into it and it goes away and you're okay, but you still have this. There's no way to really prep for that scary feeling when you're taking a big risk on something in any category, really.
Yeah, and if you're just watching, you don't see the behind the scenes. Like my girlfriend, she hears the behind the scenes of running a martial arts business and running multiple schools, right? So she hears about this person showed up late a bunch of times, so this person quit, and then this other person quit within 6 months, and it's like she always asks, like, "How do you deal with this? Like, is there ever a time when everything's good?" I'm like, "Not really. It's just one fire, and you put out another fire, but there's never not fire. There's always smoke, right?"
It's like there isn't a process where everything goes as planned. You just learn to expect that things are not going to go as planned. It doesn't mean that you don't need a plan, because some things do go to plan, and sometimes you really needed that plan in order to have your most efficient shoot day, or in order to have an effect really work that you wanted to, or in order to give some performers enough time to prepare for a really emotionally challenging scene. But you also have to. I really am at the stage where I sort of chuckle every time something comes up that is about to derail my entire plan of what I'm going to do shooting, and I'm just like, okay, fine, all right, well, here's what we're going to do. Like, I'll try to make sure I understand the entirety of the problem. It'll be like, okay, what do we have and what do we don't have? Okay, we don't have this, this, and this. Okay, do we have anything now that we didn't have before? Sometimes the answer is no, but sometimes they'll be like, well, we have access to a different building, or actually we can replace this actor. This actor just dropped out, but we've got this other guy who was really funny and his audition was great. Okay, great. Call him in. tell everybody that we're going over to this other location. Let's go. I'm kind of it's sort of I feel like you have to kind of learn to be invigorated by those challenges. Otherwise, you're not going to make it.
Yeah, absolutely. Too stressful. And also, the more you do it, the more callous you become to it, right? Like you said, you can laugh. I have a video of me on a Zoom call with a new school owner, and like while we're talking, and we just moved into this new building. It's like it's all new construction, so it's pretty. And while we're on the Zoom, all of a sudden I hear water. I'm like, what is that? What is that noise? He's like, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. And he like stands up and like runs off the screen. And luckily I was recording the Zoom session because it's just like funny. And there's like a pipe bursting like over the side of the mat. And it's like, everything's brand new, And for him, I'm like,
oh my God,
he's got a new school, he's a new operator, and it's like the biggest thing in the world. And me, I'm like, oh, that's ridiculous. Don't worry, we'll figure it out. Like, we got this. So I want to transition to social media because obviously you've done a really good job of building your social media presence, especially in a world of martial arts. So I think people are pretty much horrible storytellers in martial arts. And like in terms of the impact that you make on someone's life in martial arts is so tremendous, and I feel like we're really bad at telling people stories. Like, a lot of times we'll show a testimonial. It'll be like some shaky phone camera with class going on in the background. You can't really hear anything, and it's like, oh yeah, martial arts helped me build my confidence. And like that's it. Like, there's no deep story, right? And you tell deep stories all the time in your production, but also you tell the deep side of Master Ken that like resonates with people. So if you were gonna tell martial arts school owners how they can grow their social media to bring in new members,
I would say, so number one, I agree with you, but number two, I think it is something you can practice. I think that's the good news. There's obviously the production aspect of it, like how to make videos that are high quality, making sure that you have good sound, making sure that the light is good, and then there's also the side of things where when it comes to packaging, like making the video is one thing, but then presenting it to the audience in a way where it has the most opportunity to reach the most people in terms of your title, your thumbnail, things like that. And nowadays, the autoplay function is a really, we should get into that at some point, because the autoplay function has changed everything, because now when you scroll on almost every platform, videos just start playing. So you realize how important the first 3 seconds of your video is, not just in whatever you see. Yeah, not just in whatever you see, but whatever you read.
The hook, right?
Like the captions should have something really compelling in them in the first sentence, because people are scrolling past a million videos. And then there's the sincerity part, the storytelling part. I think that I always enjoyed and had maybe a little bit of a knack for comedic improv, but I never workshopped the process. And then I became a YouTuber, and it took me a couple of years to learn that I had to just get used to pumping out content more often than I was used to. And so I had to sometimes just sort of walk in front of the camera and make something up so that I could put it on YouTube. And now I've not only done that for my YouTube videos, but I've done it in my live performance where, maybe a certain number of, I would be in a position where maybe I had prepared a certain number of jokes, and I misunderstood, or there was a miscommunication that like, oh, this is a group of people who do Hapkido and Krav Maga. And then I get there and they're like, I don't know who told you we do Hapkido. Nobody here does Hapkido. So it's like, okay, so all the Hapkido jokes have to go. But now that's like a 3-minute hole in my show, where I have to figure out how to fill that 3 minutes, And so I'm just like, all right, well, I'll have to come up with something on the fly. So I've had years and years of just practicing it, just like putting the camera up or going out on stage, having a plan, but also being willing to change that plan at a moment's notice if something presents itself that is a better idea. Absolutely.
Yeah,
That's a
be
great way
rigid
to
in
put
your
this.
goals, flexible how you get there, right? So who do you, is there someone you follow or someone you look at to learn these strategies for growing your social media? And especially with YouTube, like there's a lot of nuance with titles and thumbnails.
I would definitely
and
say
everything
yes.
you mentioned.
I would say, one of the best ways to learn this stuff is to just look up YouTube advice and whatever year we're in. YouTube advice 2024, there's a whole genre of people who are like, Think Media has a lot of really great stuff. I'm going to blank on the ones that I watch all the time, but all the, Mr. Beast has given some really great, really insightful interviews. They're fantastic, and they're things that
I've heard his. They're
some
amazing.
of the things he mentions seem so obvious, and yet they're things I haven't thought of. Somebody I personally know, John Correa, he has a channel called Active Self-Protection. He has about 2 million subscribers on his primary channel, and then he has a secondary channel that I think has a couple 100,000. And he analyzes gunfights, like real life security footage, badge cam footage, situations of life and death. He began analyzing these videos to try to gather data on what tends to help people survive these situations. What do people who survive tend to do? What do people who don't survive tend to do? And although that content isn't the content that I would normally watch, I became friends with him at an event and started picking his brain about what he does and how he does his brand and how he produces his content, and have learned so much from him. I'm constantly just going and looking at his channels or sending him a text and being like, hey, I'm trying to figure this thing out. What am I doing wrong? And he'll just be like, oh, no, you're on the right track. Just adjust this, adjust that. So mentorship, I think, is really, really important. But I also think, particularly in sort of the wild west of online social media, online video, there are also so many opportunities to experiment with what will work. Because ultimately, nobody really knows what's going to land every time.
So let's say I'm a school owner and I post pictures here and there, or maybe some videos on my Instagram.
I would say
I want to make it better. Where do I start?
A schedule helps. Having a little calendar, that says like, okay, I'm going to post 3 days a week, or even 2 days a week, or once a week if you feel like that's all you can handle, and just start there. And then look at the type of content that you want to look like. Like, what do you watch? What catches your eye? What stops you from scrolling and has you engaged in a video? And then really study it. Well, why did I stop? Was it the thumbnail? Was it the title? Was it that there was like somebody doing some really cool like backflip right in the very beginning of the video, and I had to stop and go, oh man, that's cool. Like, what is it? And then emulate that. But don't directly copy. Just ask yourself, what's my version of this? How do I still manage some sincerity in what I want to create, and also follow some of the best practices that creators who I'm really impressed with and whose content I engage with, what they do.
Yeah, and I think for social media, just some of the school owners, especially more traditional or been around for a while, they go, oh, I'm not a social media person, right? Or, oh, I can't figure that out. And it's like, well, you figured out how to do martial arts in a very advanced way because you took the reps. You did, 10,000 side kicks. And, most people, they see a side kick, a parent watching, on the mat, they see a side kick. I can never do that. But they could if they did 10,000 of them, right? So you really just have to go through the reps. And I think most times people, they're impatient. Like, I've been doing this podcast now for about a year. I would say it's nowhere near where I want it to be. I mean, I mainly do it for the clips and so I can repurpose it.
Absolutely.
But, I'm just going to keep on doing it until it's good, right? Like, I'm not going to quit now because I still need to go through that learning process. Otherwise, I just wasted all that time. So if you were going to give me a tip, let's say I'm growing my social media content for this podcast, which helps my consulting and coaching side of martial
what
arts.
I would say is,
what would you say to me?
Once again, being clear on the goal. Like, what is the goal? Is it as many followers as you can get? Is it better engagement on the followers you have, which sometimes is honestly, I don't want to say more valuable, but valuable in a different way. Because if you have a high number of subscribers or followers, people will pay attention to you. Like, if you just send them your social media and you have 1 million followers on something, they're like, oh, well, there's clearly interest in this. But that may not help you at all with conversions. If you're trying to sell something, if you're trying to get somebody in the door of your business or buy something online, that might not mean anything. So defining the goal and then, trying to figure out what has really worked for you so far. Because there's all these little victories that happen in the course of producing content where you're putting it out there, you're getting, fewer views than you would like, but you feel like the content's good, but you can't quite figure out why nobody watched this one that you really liked or whatever. And then you upload a clip, and this clip all of a sudden becomes the most watched thing you've ever done. Usually the mistake is to say, oh, I get it, I should do clips exactly like this. No, don't do clips exactly like that, because no one's going to watch. You already did it. Figure out what it was. What were the qualities about that clip? Was it the caption? Was it the title? Was it the topic that we were covering? Was it that something funny kind of happened in the beginning of the video that distracted everybody and then they got into the video? What was it? And then replicate that.
So how do you take scrupulous notes and like what worked in certain videos and what didn't?
Really.
How do you keep track of that?
I would say we're at the beginning of 2024 right now.
Okay.
I am doing that now more than I've ever done it, where I really am taking a collection of notes and evaluating the videos that have performed the best over the past couple of years, taking notes on best practices from a lot of creators and saying, what's the upgrade? What do I need to do? What are like three to five big changes I can make that can really elevate what I do and make me excited about those changes? Because I think any creator can sort of get complacent and can get sort of in a routine of like, well, this is how I do content. That's fine as long as the content is being watched. If the content is not being watched, you got to change your process. And so for a while, I was moving further and further away. This is one sort of very funny and frustrating note that I've noticed. I came into the YouTube world with a film background, a degree in filmmaking. And so we ran it like a movie. We had a 15-person cast and crew. We had all this expensive equipment. We had multiple cameras. It would take a week and a half to edit an episode. It was like we put the work in. And then I noticed that I needed to upload more content and I couldn't get the crew together. So like I said, I would just put a camera up at the dojo myself, and me and my buddy Joe Conway, who plays Todd Woodland, Master Ken's faithful assistant, we would just improvise something. And those videos would get more views than all of the videos that we were spending 2 days shooting and a week and a half editing and all this production. So back then the lesson was, okay, take less time on production. Don't worry as much about production value. Nobody cares. Just get the content out. Worry about the subject matter. Now, I've been watching a ton of videos about how to get ahead of the game and how to differentiate yourself from creators in 2024. Guess what everybody's talking about? Production value. They're all like, you got to have a nice lens. You might want to have a second camera. Make sure your sound is really pristine. Can you throw a drone shot in there? Can you do all this stuff? And I'm thinking, I knew that before. I was doing that 10 years ago, and it was bogging us down, you know? And so I completely released that desire to apply my craft as I had learned it. And now all these young TikTokers and YouTubers are like, yeah, there's this really cool kind of, thing called depth of field, and you can kind of make the background out of focus, and it makes it look more professional. And I'm like, okay, so I'm coming full circle, and the good news is I already know that stuff. So I'm going to be able to apply it to my new content. But it is really ironic that I started that way, and only now 10 years later is that the way to distinguish yourself from everybody else.
Yeah, I mean, everything eventually always comes full circle, right? Whether it's like a fashion trend, right? It was like skinny jeans for a while. Now we're back to like
music,
bell
like I
bottoms.
hear
See,
stuff that like sound like synthwave stuff. It sounds like
here?
80s music, where I'm like, God, this sounds so much like what I grew up with, and it's marketed to people my age now. But the youngins hear the stuff and like, oh, this is a really cool new sound, and I'm like, it's not new. We listened to this 30 years ago. It's fine. So.
Yeah. And I think the important thing also, like you said earlier, is like just get started. So don't get bogged down that you have to have perfect production or perfect audio. 'Cause then you'll never get started. It's
still have standards on. The most important thing is to make content. That's the most important thing, because you're probably never going to make the perfect piece of content. And if you do, you're just going to have to go make another one. A friend of mine who's an actress who made an appearance on, I think it was season 2 of Enter the Dojo, she did a musical number with her theater troupe, I think it was, and it was black and white, and it was like old timey, and it was about current events in some way, and it went hyper viral, millions and millions and millions and millions of views. So she called me and she's like, "What do I do?" I said, "You need to make another video right away. Get your friends together, figure something else out. don't do exactly what you just did, but make something else and get it out immediately. And she said, okay. And like 3 months later, they still hadn't made a video because they were paralyzed by the opportunity. They couldn't agree as a group on what to make next because they felt that whatever they made next had to be even better than the thing that went viral. It had to be even smarter, even better produced, even whatever. And so they might have eventually gotten something out, but by the time they did, all of that social media momentum had died down. And so they kind of missed the moment there. And I've done that where I've had something go viral and it's at a time when I'm overwhelmed or I'm sick or I'm traveling or I just don't have it in me to double down on a particular thing. And I say, okay, I have managed to follow this up before. This one, I'm just going to have to let it go. I can't do this one. But you learn enough that like figuring out how to respond when something does well.
So do you shoot content and create content?
I have done batch
do you do it
content.
every day?
It's tricky because a lot of it is comedic improv. And a lot of times I'm feeling out what the concept is as we're shooting it. And I honestly, a lot of times don't have the energy to improvise 3 separate skits on 3 separate topics in a studio over 8 hours or something like that. I usually come in and I spend a lot of time prepping, a lot of conversation with whoever I'm shooting with about like what is the joke, what is this about, and then we just sort of riff and then that's it. We shoot it and then we move on. The exception I would say is my live appearances. When I'm out there performing live, then I'm able to just clip whatever it is I do because I'm just in improv mode the whole time. When I'm out there performing live, I'm not just out on stage. I'm meeting people. I'm signing autographs. Maybe I have a big show tomorrow, but tonight they're just asking me if I can go and do 15 minutes on stage at a banquet dinner, which they didn't tell me about until today. And then I'm like, okay, so I got to come up with 15 minutes of material by tonight. And I'll just go up and just tell my girlfriend, like, I don't know if any of this is going to be any good, but just film it. And then, a few jokes land, and now I've got 3 or 4 clips I can post that honestly will get great views. Oftentimes more views than the stuff that I'm in the studio and we got the lighting and we got the mics and everything. So it's a constant balance.
So when she's filming that, she just use it. You said she's using her phone or your phone. You don't have a mic on, or maybe using a mic in the.
We're experimenting. We still haven't found super reliable Bluetooth lavaliers. So what I've been doing is wearing one of those, and then as a backup, I have a lavalier set that goes directly to a memory card, where there's no signal being transmitted, because it has happened several times before where right on the setup for the punchline, there's a little bit of radio interference and it ruins the audio. So I've never had that happen with the self-contained mics. So really what I just tend to do is we film the whole thing on the phone, then download it to the laptop, sync it up with the external sound, and then clip it up.
So obviously when you have a large social media presence, you'll get a lot of likes, but also comments. So do you read your comments? The
comment section can be terrible.
And yeah. So I'm curious for someone like you, because obviously you're posting things that probably make a lot of people upset, right? Which is good. You want a lot of people upset, and a lot of people will love you, right? And obviously some people don't get the irony or sarcasm.
When I go up on stage and I'm doing something where the entire joke is obviously that what I am demonstrating is wildly dangerous and nonsensical and you should never do it. And then I have hundreds of comments with people who just looked at it with the sound off for 20 seconds and didn't hear any of the laughter. And they go, this guy's going to get somebody killed. And I'm like, oh my goodness, They don't criticize me as often as they did. I will say they definitely keep me honest as far as staying in shape. If I start to get a little skinny or a little heavy, they'll tell me. They will. Right.
I was going to tell you on the
I get
podcast, but
those
I couldn't see
comments of like,
below the shoulder.
Master Ken's looking a little skinny. Is he sick or something? Or Master Ken's getting a little bulky. He's got to get on the treadmill. And so I'm like, okay, all right, noted. But as far as the content, the great thing is that like even if people aren't in on the joke, people getting really, really worked up about the content drives it forward. It makes people share it, makes people engage. And so ironically, people getting upset about it is actually sort of a vital part of the process.
Yeah, that's awesome. So does your girlfriend read the comments? Does she look at it and go, "Oh my god, these people are horrible"?
To it. The process is so.
Okay.
The process is so overwhelming, honestly. Like, we're in the mode where we create a ton of content and we're traveling and putting stuff out. And then I get kind of burnt out, and then I'll just take a couple weeks off and just be like, I just need to put all that away for a second. And then something weird online will go viral, and it'll give me an idea for a video, and I'll go, oh, I'm going to go make a video about this, and then we're off and running again.
Very cool. So tell me, I know you do a lot of shows for martial arts conventions. I've been to many of them you've done. Tell me one that you've done that maybe is different than in martial arts, but something you didn't expect that would want someone like Master Ken.
Yeah, I remember one
I
think it was in Raleigh, and this guy was just a huge fan, and he worked for Caterpillar distribute like the big trucks and the construction equipment, everything. Okay. And that was who I was performing for. They were like, this is going to be, they're having a big employee day, and they want entertainment, so you're the entertainment. And I was like, do any of these people study martial arts? And he's like, probably not, honestly. And I was like, oh, okay, wow. And then on top of it, they had, this is kind of like the tough part of the story. They had, I think, a couple of employees. There had been an accident the day before I showed up that had taken the lives of two employees. So I showed up to a place where nobody knew martial arts, nobody knew who I was, and they were all kind of in shock from this tragedy that happened the day before. And then they were like, okay, good luck, go make everybody laugh. And I was like, oh my God, this is going to be a disaster.
Yeah.
And honestly, it was a great show. It took about 15 minutes to get them to understand what it was that I was doing, because if you're a martial artist, you get what I'm doing right away. If you have never studied martial arts, I have to provide a context in a way that people will understand. And that's what ended up happening. Is it once I got them, it was a great show. It was fantastic.
Very cool. So I want to ask you just a couple of random questions before we head off here and kind of put you on the spot. So tell me your favorite place you've ever traveled.
My favorite place I've ever traveled, I'm going to say Italy. I did a show in Montesilvano and we got to stay in Rome for a few days afterwards, and it was just magical.
Okay. What tool do you use in your business that you think everyone needs to know about?
Man, I'm going to say something and they should pay me. But I'm not going to. I'll send them the video afterwards. There are two versions of this actually. There's one called vidIQ and one called YouTube Buddy, and those are basically sites that give you additional analytics. They help you compare your channel to other channels in your genre. They tell you what followers who are following and engaging with your content. They tell you who else they're following and what they're engaging with. They suggest titles. They suggest all kinds of things. I have found that to be quite helpful, honestly, because sometimes it's just too much for me to think about. And so sometimes I want to just sign into vidIQ. It links with my YouTube channel, and I upload it, and it analyzes it and says, okay, here's what we think is a good title. Here's the tags you should use. I think that stuff is really helpful.
Okay, that's a good one. What's the best gift you've ever received?
That's funny. I'm looking at it. The belt that Master Ken has been wearing, which I don't know how much longer he's going to be wearing it because he's due for a promotion. There's a red and white belt with kanji writing on it, and the backside is black. That was surrendered to me at a show. A guy came up to me and bowed to me when I was at the show doing my thing, and he said, "I have seen the light. This is my Kempo black belt. I no longer wish to train in that style. I wish to dedicate myself to you." And he gave me the belt, and I kind of looked at it and I was like, "This belt matches my outfit. I should just wear this." Like, and so that was like 8 years ago, and I'm still wearing that belt. I'm telling you, I've halfway.
Have you thought about starting a cult?
Like,
it sounds
one of
like
the
you
biggest
have a good
mistakes
following.
that people make when they go online and they get really upset and they comment on my videos, they don't have to worry about my responses. My followers will just swarm them and just be like, "How dare you insult the great Master Ken?" They just get inundated. And so, yeah, I'm halfway there already.
Yeah. I love that. All right, another one. Would you rather spend 1 year at the North Pole or 6 months in the Sahara Desert?
I'm assuming I get to bring provisions. I hate the cold so much. I grew up in Maine. I love Maine. Maine's a beautiful place to be from. I love visiting Maine in the summertime. But if I never had another winter my whole life, I'd be fine. I love warm weather, so I'd pick the hottest over the coldest any day. Oh my God! Yeah, we used to wake up.
20 degrees where I am right now.
Like I spent years waking up to catch the bus, and it's like dark out and cloudy and 10 degrees, and I'm just like, I remember even thinking as a kid, I was like, I can't spend the rest of my life living here.
You know, that actually reminds me of something you said in a different interview. You're talking about how you learned kill face.
Yep.
Right, and you learned it from one of your instructors who
I
would have that
he's the guy
intimidating
who
face.
plays
It's
the
very
killer
scary looking.
in Cop vs. Killer, my feature film. He is a very highly skilled martial artist. His name is Kevin Conan Bankins. He runs a school called Bankins Mountain MMA in Los Alamos, New Mexico. And he is a black belt under Hoist Gracie. He's trained in a bunch of other styles. And I remember one time when I had first met him, he was teaching a class, and he said, "The most important thing is that you got to get you a face. Get you a face that is so scary that just your opponent looking at your face makes them think, I don't want to fight this guy." And so that was like, and I understood the psychological intent behind it, but also in the back of my mind, I was like, yeah, like a kill face, like a face that's so dangerous that that's the weapon. And so that was how the kill face was born.
Yeah, that's amazing. And like when I heard that, it reminded me of an interview I heard with do you watch football or no? No, okay. Well, there's a football player, Tyreek Hill. He's like amazing. He's the best wide receiver. Okay, and they just played this game recently when we're recording this in January 2024, where it was in I think Kansas City, and it was -3 degrees during game time with negative 27 wind chill. -27. Buddy, the people had beers out like at the game, and they would take it out and like go to their seat, and it would completely freeze over. It was like you couldn't even have a beer. I don't know how you could survive walking around.
Would pick the opposite. My dad has always said, well, the thing about if it's cold is you can always put on another layer. And I do not understand that. I love my dad. I do not see it the same way. I would love to spend the rest of my life in a warm climate.
Yeah. Yeah. So Tyreek Hill, in terms of kill face, he comes out to the game and he doesn't put on a jacket. He's wearing short sleeves, shows up to the game, doesn't care. And afterwards they interviewed him and he's like, yeah, I want to show them that nothing bothers me. It's all in your head, and it's all mental. And I'm not going to show those other people that are weak because of the cold. I'm not going to I want to go in there as intimidating as possible. The cold doesn't even bother me.
Did they have an ambulance standing by to take him in for hypothermia, or was he like fine? Was he somehow magically fine? Okay. He couldn't move.
He survived, but they lost the game, so they weren't that intimidated, I guess. He got his ass kicked. All right, well, I have one more for you. So, what's something, or what's one idea that you think the majority of people get wrong about you?
I would say, I guess what comes to mind right away is that my first choice is always comedy. I really love comedy. I love making people laugh. It's a privilege to make people laugh, to lighten their day. But the trick with being known for comedy is that if I try to be serious about anything, people are waiting for the punchline. And so, like, even when I share things on social media, if I share a meme or just something really thoughtful with like with like some music that really made me kind of, emotional or made me think, or some sort of insight, I'll get half a dozen people being like, I don't get it. And I'm like, oh, no, that wasn't a joke. That was just me. Like, that was a philosophical thing that I found really inspiring, and I wanted to share it with people. And they were like, yeah, cool. Stick to the jokes, clown boy. Exactly.
All right, Karate Clown, go back to work. Yeah. All right, cool. Thank you so much for coming on here. If someone wants to order your movie, how do they, or
you
movie,
can
how do
buy
they
or
find
rent
it?
it on Amazon. If you don't mind commercials, you can watch it for free on Tubi. I think it's on Google Play. Yeah, if you just look up the movie Cop vs. Killer 2023, there is another movie called Cop vs. Killer that we didn't know until it was too late. That is from 2000. It's from 2011 or 2012. So just make sure you put in 2023. Yeah, the newer one. And if you
The newer
whether
one.
you like it or not, or don't like the movie, rate it, leave a comment, because the more engagement we get in general, whether you hate the movie or whether you love the movie or you're somewhere in between, the more engagement on it, the better for us. Because I would love to make more movies, and this is my first one, so like I got to do better. I got to do bigger, better work.
Yeah. So you made a movie,
We got
didn't know there
very
was
close.
another movie
There's a whole
within the
thing
last
about
10
the
years
name
with
of
the
the
same
movie.
name?
Like, initially it was called Cop, and then like a slash, and then Killer. And so then we kept saying like Cop/Killer. And then when it came time to like create an LLC and open a bank account to put money in, the tellers just kept saying, and the account is Cop Killer? And I was like, no, that's not what it is. And they would say it loud, too, and kind of people kind of looking at me, and I'm like, that's not what the movie's about. That's not coming across right. So we started brainstorming. I'm like, what can we put in between Cop and Killer that stops people from saying Cop Killer? So we settled on Versus, and that's the title of the movie.
That's so funny. Yeah. Yeah. And I'm sure everyone who's listening on here already follows you,
look up
but in
Master
case someone
Ken
doesn't, how do they find
Facebook
you?
and TikTok and Instagram. It's Master American, Ken. But if you just Google Master Ken, all of our stuff will come up. We just passed the 1 million subscriber mark on YouTube. So yeah, thank you. We're kind of the traffic is good. The SEO is good on Master Ken right now, so you should be able to find it.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much for being on here, and it was wonderful. And thank you.